Some people say betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from a stranger. I disagree. When someone you trust looks you in the eyes and lies, it's like they reach inside your chest and twist your heart until it stops beating. I didn't know it that night, but I was about to learn exactly how far someone I loved could fall that I've known Daniel for most of my life. We grew up 2 houses apart, riding bikes in the summer, sneaking out to the lake at night, sharing every secret like brothers. Even after we both moved away for work, we stayed close. I trusted him more than anyone. That summer, I came back to our hometown for a few weeks. It felt like nothing had changed. The heat, the sound of cicadas, the smell of cut grass drifting through the open windows. Daniel invited me to stay over at his place, saying it'd be like old times. His house was small but comfortable. The first night we stayed up late talking, laughing about stupid things we did as kids. I remember thinking, yeah, this is home. But even then, there were moments I should have noticed, like when I mentioned running into Claire, an old classmate, and he froze for just a second before smiling too quickly, or the way he locked his phone the moment I glanced at it, even though he used to hand it to me without a thought. They were small things, easy to dismiss. We all have private lives. Still, something in his eyes that night made me feel like I'd just brushed past the edge of something dangerous. The next few days were off. Daniel still laughed at my jokes, still poured me coffee in the morning, but it felt like he was somewhere else in his head. On the third night, he said he needed to step out for a quick errand. He didn't come back for nearly 2 hours. When I asked where he'd been, he just shrugged and said, helping someone out. No details, no explanation. I wanted to believe him, but his voice carried a strange distance, like he'd practiced the words before saying them. One afternoon, I offered to grab us beers from his fridge. That's when I noticed the drawer in his hallway desk was slightly open. Inside was an old leather notebook. Daniel was never the type to keep a diary, so my curiosity got the better of me. Most pages were blank, but in the back were scattered notes. Single sentences, written in messy, hurried handwriting. She knows. Don't let him find out. They meet at night. The entry stopped abruptly, as if someone had been interrupted mid-thought. My chest tightened. Who was she? Who was him? That night, I couldn't stop replaying it in my head. When Daniel stepped out again, I walked around the house, tried to make sense of things. In his laundry room, I noticed a phone charger plugged into the wall. The cable stretched toward the back of a shelf. Behind an old box of cleaning supplies was a second phone. No case, no lock screen photo, just a blank black rectangle in my hand. It buzzed once. A text lit up the screen. Same place. Don't bring him. My pulse pounded in my ears. The message disappeared before I could read more. When I heard the front door open, I put everything back and forced myself to act normal. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't staying with the same Daniel I'd known my whole life. It happened on a Thursday night. The air outside was heavy, thick with the kind of summer heat that makes you restless. Daniel said he was heading out for a bit again, and this time I followed. I kept my distance as he walked down side streets I hadn't been on in years. Eventually, he stopped at the edge of an old service road that led to the abandoned mill. A single floodlight burned over the parking lot, casting him in a pale, ghostly glow. Someone else was there, a woman in a faded denim jacket. They spoke in low voices, their faces tense. Then she handed him something small. It glinted under the light. My stomach dropped when I recognized it. It was my mother's silver locket, the one she'd lost years ago, the one I thought had simply vanished. I stepped out before I could think. Daniel. My voice cracked. He spun around, the color draining from his face. The woman melted into the shadows, without a word. I can explain, he said, holding up the locket. It's not what you think. But the explanation that spilled out made my skin crawl. He told me he'd been meeting people, strangers, who had items from different houses in town, things missing for years. He was paying them quietly to get them back, because if the police got involved, certain truths about those homes would surface. Truths like what? I demanded. His eyes met mine. Like yours. It hit me in an instant. The reason he'd been so secretive, the reason my mother's locket was in his hands. Years ago, before I moved away, I'd done something I'd buried deep. I'd stolen it, not out of malice, but out of a stupid, impulsive need to have something beautiful. I told myself she'd just lost it. Daniel knew. He'd known all along. And now, he was doing the same thing for others, hiding sins, burying mistakes. He wasn't just protecting himself under that light. He was protecting. I couldn't tell if that made him loyal or dangerous. I wanted to believe there was still trust between us, that maybe Daniel's secrecy had been some misguided way to shield me. But the truth was sitting there in his palm, my mother's locket, like a loaded weapon. "You've been following me," he said, his voice low, almost calm. "You've been lying to me." I shot back. He took a slow step toward me, and something in his expression shifted. It wasn't anger. It was resignation. "You don't understand how deep this goes. I understand you've been meeting with thieves, hiding things from me, and holding my past over my head." My voice cracked. "That's not friendship. That's control." His jaw tightened. "I've been cleaning up your mess since we were kids. Not just yours, everyone's. Do you know what happens when secrets come out in a town this small? People lose everything." "Maybe they should," I said before I could stop myself. Something in him snapped. His hand tightened around the locket until his knuckles went white. For a moment, I thought he might throw it at me. Instead, he turned and hurled it into the weeds beyond the fence. The sound of metal hitting the ground was sharper than it should have been. "You don't want to know what I've kept buried for you," he said, his voice shaking now. I stepped closer. "Tell me." He looked at me, not with hate, but with a deep, exhausted kind of grief, and said, "If I tell you, you won't be able to live here anymore. You won't even be able to look in a mirror." The weight of those words pressed on my chest. I realized then that knowing might be worse than ignorance. But the damage was done. Whatever we'd been to each other had cracked beyond repair. Without another word, Daniel walked past me, disappearing into the dark. I didn't follow, and in the silence that followed, I realized something terrifying. Maybe I didn't want the truth, because if I heard it, I might have to admit that the worst part of me had always been there. I never saw Daniel again after that night. His house sat dark the rest of the summer, like it had been abandoned for years. No one in town seemed to know where he'd gone, or maybe they just didn't want to tell me. Sometimes, I walk past the old mill road and think about the locket buried somewhere in the weeds. I could look for it. I could dig it up, wipe it clean, pretend it was never missing. But every time I consider it, I hear Daniel's voice in my head. "You don't want to know what I've kept buried for you." And maybe he was right. I used to believe that truth was always better than lies. That honesty was a kind of purity. But now, I'm not sure. Sometimes the truth rots everything it touches. The question that keeps me up at night isn't whether Daniel was a good friend or a dangerous man. It's whether, deep down, I wanted him to keep my secrets so I'd never have to face what I'd really done. Some betrayals happen so quietly. You don't even hear the knife slip between your ribs. It's not the shouting or the fights that haunt you. It's the moments that felt normal, right before you realize the person beside you isn't on your side anymore. I learned that one summer night, when the person I trusted most decided my life was worth less than their secret. My cousin Emily and I were as close as sisters. She was a year older, the one who always knew what to say when my world felt shaky. Growing up, we spent summers at my aunt's lake house, swimming all day and staying up late on the porch, telling each other things we'd never tell anyone else. This summer was supposed to be the same, just the two of us, away from the noise of our lives. Emily had been through a rough breakup, and I thought she needed the escape. The lake house hadn't changed much. Same creaky floors, same faint smell of pine and old books. At night, we'd sit outside listening to the water lap against the dock, the kind of quiet that makes you forget the rest of the world exists. But a few days in, I noticed something. She kept glancing at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. If I asked, she'd smile and say it was nothing. Then there were the late-night walks. She'd slip out, saying she needed fresh air, and come back with that distant look in her eyes, like she'd been somewhere else entirely. I told myself not to pry. We were family. Family doesn't hide things, right? The next night, Emily slipped out again. I stayed on the porch, pretending to scroll through my phone. but my eyes kept flicking toward the dock. When she came back, she was holding her shoes, her hair slightly damp, like she'd been near the water. "You okay?" I asked casually. "Yeah, just walked to the pier," she said. Her voice was light, but she didn't meet my eyes. Later, when she went to shower, I noticed her phone lying on the couch. I didn't mean to snoop, at least. That's what I told myself, but my hands moved before my conscience caught up. Her texts were strange. No names, just a string of numbers. Messages like, "He doesn't know I'm here with you." Midnight, same spot. "I have what you need." My stomach twisted. Who was he? And what exactly did she have? I set the phone back before she returned, but my mind wouldn't let it go. The following day, I tried to keep things normal. We went swimming, grilled burgers, and laughed about old memories. But I kept noticing little inconsistencies, like when she said she hadn't spoken to anyone from home. Yet I saw her phone buzzing with a call from a local number. That evening, she told me she was going to bed early. I waited until I heard her bedroom door close, then crept outside. The moon was bright enough to light the lake in silver. And there she was, down at the far dock, handing something to a man in a dark jacket. I couldn't see what it was, but the way she gripped it, it wasn't casual. It was deliberate. When the man took it, he glanced over her shoulder. For a split second, I thought his eyes locked on mine. I froze on the path, my bare feet pressing into the damp wood of the dock. Emily turned sharply, spotting me in the moonlight. "What are you doing out here?" Her voice was sharp, almost panicked. "I could ask you the same thing," I said, my gaze flicking to the stranger behind her. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. Emily's shoulders tensed. "It's not what you think." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Then tell me, who is he, and what did you just hand him?" She stepped toward me, blocking my view of the man. "If you love me, you'll drop it." That line hit me harder than it should have. Love? Family? I'd have done anything for her. But she was hiding something big, something dangerous. Finally, she sighed. "It's medicine, for someone who can't get it legally. He's paying me." At midnight, in the middle of nowhere. I shot back. Her eyes glistened in the dim light. "It's not for him. It's for his kid. She's sick. The kind of sick that doesn't wait for prescriptions or paperwork." I stared at her, my anger colliding with something else, guilt. If she was telling the truth, she was risking everything to help someone. But why keep it from me? The man slipped away into the night, leaving us standing on the dock, the water rippling quietly around us. "You wouldn't understand," she whispered. "You've always believed the rules were there for a reason, but sometimes you have to break them." Her words lodged deep inside me. Part of me wanted to believe her. Another part couldn't shake the image of that secretive exchange, the money slipping into her pocket. Was she saving a child's life? Or was that just a story she told herself to feel better about crossing a line? Either way, something between us had shifted. The Emily I thought I knew was gone. The next day, I couldn't look at Emily without replaying the dock scene in my head. Every laugh felt rehearsed. Every word dipped in something unspoken. By evening, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "I know you think you're helping someone," I said. "But meeting strangers in the dark? Taking cash for whatever that was? You're one step away from getting caught or worse." Her jaw tightened. "And if I told you the whole truth, you'd hate me." "Try me," I snapped. She hesitated, then spoke so quietly I almost didn't hear her. "It's not just medicine. Some of it isn't legal, but it sells fast, and I use the money to cover what his daughter needs." The words hit like ice water. "So you're dealing now?" "Emily." "It's not dealing," she cut in sharply. "It's doing what has to be done when nobody else will. You think the police would care about some kid in a trailer park with the wrong insurance?" I opened my mouth, but no words came, because part of me knew she was right. The system doesn't save everyone. But part of me also knew she was walking a road that ended in handcuffs, or worse. "I can't be part of this," I said finally. "If you keep doing this, you're on your own." She stared at me for a long time, her expression unreadable. Then she walked past me toward the water, her voice carrying back in the humid air. "I was never asking you to be part of it. I was asking you not to stop me." That night, I heard her car start around midnight. By morning, she was gone. No note, no call. I never saw her again. It's been months since that summer, and Emily still hasn't called. Her social media is gone, her apartment empty. My aunt says she's traveling, but I can't hear the lie in her voice. Sometimes I wonder if she's still out there, meeting strangers under dim streetlights, exchanging envelopes and promises. If the kid she talked about was even real. I tell myself I stayed on the right side of the line, that walking away was the only choice. But late at night, when the house is quiet, I think about the look in her eyes, that mix of desperation and defiance. Maybe she was doing something good in a terrible way, or maybe she was using a noble excuse to hide a darker truth. I'll never know. What I do know is this: I could have stopped her. I could have called someone, and I didn't, because deep down, a part of me wondered if she was right, that sometimes breaking the rules isn't the worst thing you can do. The worst thing might be standing by and doing nothing at all. People think evil announces itself in screams, in threats, in violence. But sometimes it sits across from you at the dinner table, smiling, asking how your day was. One summer night, I learned that the real danger isn't the stranger outside your door. It's the person who's already inside and knows exactly which part of you to destroy first. When I first met Mark, I thought I'd lucked out. We'd started working at the same hardware store in town, and he had this calm, reliable energy that made you feel safe. We'd grab beers after closing, complain about customers, talk about everything from music to childhood memories. By the end of that summer, he wasn't just my co-worker. He was my closest friend, the kind of person you'd trust with your house keys. So when my landlord decided to sell my apartment, Mark was the first to offer me his spare room, cheaper than rent anywhere else. He'd said, "And you'll have company." The arrangement worked at first. We'd cook dinner together, watch late-night movies, and fall into easy conversation like always. But I started noticing things. Once, I came home to find my bedroom door unlocked, even though I'd made a point of locking it before leaving. Another time, I saw my laptop screen tilted at a different angle, like someone had been sitting there. They were small things, easy to explain away. But each time, I caught Mark watching me for just a second too long, like he was measuring something in his head. It started with little disappearances. Nothing valuable at first. A pen from my desk, a coffee mug I swore I'd left in the kitchen. I'd ask Mark about it, and he'd smile, say I was probably just tired or losing track of things. One evening, he suggested we grab takeout. While he was out, I went to my room to grab my wallet and noticed something strange. The rug near my closet was bunched up, like it had been pulled and then pushed back. I lifted it, and my chest tightened. There was a faint scrape mark near the baseboard, like someone had been prying it open. I didn't have time to check further before Mark came back. His eyes flicked to the rug, then to my face. "Find something?" he asked, too casually. That night, I lay in bed listening to the sounds of the house, the creak of floorboards, the faint hum of the fridge. Just past midnight, I heard it. My bedroom door handle turning, slow and deliberate. I stayed still, pretending to sleep. The door opened a crack, then closed again. The next day, I searched while Mark was at work. In his dresser, beneath a pile of old shirts, I found a small notebook. Inside were pages of notes written in sharp, neat handwriting. "Sleeps at 1:15 most nights. Keep spare keys in the desk drawer. Hasn't told anyone about the safe." I didn't have a safe. At least, I didn't think I did. The last page made my blood run cold. It read, "Everything is ready. Wait for the right night." That night, I couldn't look at Mark the same way. Every word out of his mouth sounded rehearsed, like he'd been practicing it in front of a mirror. I waited until he left for his night shift before going back to my closet. I pulled the rug completely aside and pressed on the baseboard where I'd seen the scrape. To my shock, a small section popped loose. Inside was a narrow compartment, and in it, a black duffel bag. My hands shook as I unzipped it. Stacks of cash, jewelry I didn't recognize, and at the bottom, a small handgun wrapped in cloth. I sat there on the floor, my pulse thundering. This wasn't just creepy roommate territory. This was something criminal. When Mark came home, I confronted him. His face didn't even change. He just sighed, sat down across from me, and said, "I was going to tell you. Eventually." I demanded an explanation. "I've been watching people in this town for years," he said, his tone disturbingly calm. "Not to hurt them, to protect them. Sometimes that means taking things before someone else does. Sometimes it means having leverage." I stared at him. "Leverage? You've been breaking into people's homes." He shrugged, almost like it was a joke. "And nobody's gotten hurt. You ever wonder why no one's messed with you since you moved in? That's because they know I'm here. They know I see everything." The worst part, a small, shameful part of me believed him. In the months I'd been living there, no one had bothered me, not even the nosy landlord. But another part of me knew, whatever protection Mark thought he was giving me came with a price. And eventually, I'd be the one paying it. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the house felt sharper, every shadow darker. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I was leaving. I waited until Mark left for work before packing my bag. I was halfway through when I heard the front door unlock. He stepped into my room like he owned it, his eyes landing on the half-packed suitcase. "Going somewhere?" I didn't answer. My throat was tight. He leaned against the doorframe, blocking the exit. "You think you can just walk away? After everything I've done for you?" "What you've done," I said, forcing my voice steady, "is make me afraid to sleep in my own room." For a moment, he said nothing. Then he stepped forward and dropped something onto the bed, my phone. "I've read every message, every email. You think I don't know where you'd run?" Rage and fear clashed inside me. "You crossed the line, Mark." His expression darkened. "There's no line. There's safety and there's death. I will keep you safe." I moved toward the door, but he grabbed my arm. Not hard, but enough to make my skin crawl. "If you leave, I can't protect you anymore," he said. The weight in his voice told me it wasn't a threat. It was a promise. I yanked free, shoved past him, and didn't stop moving until I was outside, sprinting toward my car. Behind me, I heard the door slam, but he didn't follow. When I finally looked back, he was standing in the window, watching. Not angry, not sad, just calculating. I moved into a small studio across town. It's cramped, noisy, and the locks on the doors are cheap. Every time I hear footsteps in the hallway, my chest tightens. I haven't seen Mark since that morning, but I've felt him. Not literally, just small things that make me wonder. A note tucked under my windshield wiper that simply said, "Be careful." A set of muddy footprints outside my door after a rainstorm. Too large to be mine. I tell myself it's paranoia, but deep down I know better. Mark's kind of protection doesn't end because you walk away, and it doesn't come without strings. Sometimes I think about what he said, about keeping me safe. If someone really was watching me, waiting for a chance to hurt me, maybe he was the reason it never happened. But safety that comes from someone like him, is it really safety? Or is it just another kind of cage? I don't know which is worse, that he might still be out there watching me, or that a small part of me hopes he is.